This is the machine.
Welcome to episode 18. This is where we start on the electrics. I had a bit of an inkling that the electrics were interesting, shall we say. And this episode is dealing with the engine electrics, or lack thereof. Yeah, bit of a voyage of discovery on this one, and a remarkable bodge from the previous owner's mechanic. Very remarkable. Anyway, let's get into it and have a look. Need to sort out these horrors before the engine goes back in. There's one broken here, one broken here, and these fellas don't look too healthy, and that one's kind of gone completely to this. So luckily, bought a bit of wire. It's massive. So it's from a 1985 Mercedes. Don't know which one, 400, 500. It looked tiny in the advert. It's absolutely massive. It's miles, kilometers of wire here. And I probably only need like 1/100th of it. Another wormhole. Yeah. The insulation on these ones is absolutely knackered. I'm tracing it back, and I'm going to have to trace it back to the point where it's okay. But and this insulation, this junction's completely gone, and both wires are kind of. Look at that. That was a fire waiting to happen, I think. This is an absolute uber bodge. So this wire here has obviously shed its insulation a long time ago, and they've just wrapped it in tape like this. I can't imagine this has to go all the way back to the alternator, I guess. No, I don't know where these wires are. I'm gonna have to look. But this is systemic. It would never have started, and if it did, God. Right, onwards. Oh man, this is crazy. It's like somebody's gone through and rewrapped the loom with insulation tape, and it's just everything is fucked. Oh, everything is not very good in here. And so this leg of the loom, which goes to the alternator, and then this leg, that's all that's left of that one, to the starter motor. So I'm going to trace it back to this connector here. I think I can separate it and then do it on the bench, and then hopefully that one is there. That's the incoming and that's the distribution, and then I don't know here what happens. Figure out how to get that connector off. And this one's for Reese. Sent me an 11mm spanner after I complained about not having one. It's brilliant, and now I can undo this post here, which just seems perfect. Thankfully, at the other end of the connector, it all looks all right. Obviously the connector's not all right, but I mean, if I can't get a new one of these, I can always put a different type of connector in. match them, but look at the insulation on this feels good. So it's only the downstream ones that got it. I can't quite believe what I'm seeing here. Like homemade wires. Look at them. Individually homemade wires. Somebody's been so enthusiastic about this. It's unbelievable. Like, I really, even I, with my bodging skills, would not do. It gets worse. I thought this thick one was alright, but it's not. Man. It's just, what happened? They must have, I don't know. I guess there must have been a massive short at some point. Maybe they're just old. I never saw anything like this. So the reason I bought this old Mercedes loom was because it had lots of the same looking connectors on it. And so, like, if I wanted to have a 14 pin, there's one that's very similar, and then there's a female one too. And there's also a cable run that goes with it that has much the same size of cables in it. And I'm gonna have to buy new, the big ones. But I've got the garage covered in wires. Oh, that's the horror. The homemade, self-made wire loom that's burnt through. Yum yum. And I've been taking the old Mercedes loom to bits to cherry pick the best things. And the idea, let's put it into context first. So this is the connector block, the old connector block out of the Porsche, and it's in all right condition actually, but the other one on the other side, the female, is broken. So what I'm going to do is take another 14 pin connector block from the Mercedes loom and wire them to the same pin numbers, both sides, because I'll replace the because this is the female one here, so I'll replace that one on the car, and then, as luck would have it, in the loom there's a 14 pin male to go with it, which is cool. And then the male has all these wires connected to it, really long. Man, that took some stripping. It's like all this old plastic stuff, but the wires themselves are in really good condition, and there's a nice selection of fat and thin ones that will do the duty that we need them to do on the car. And so, yeah, that should work quite well. And now I'm debating whether I cut these and put in new ones which are the right colour, or more or less the right colour, or rather than having another joint, I just really make things interesting for the next person that has to deal with this, when we inevitably have a short circuit and everything burns out when I try and start it. But that might be me. Or I'll tag them. I'll figure out something on that. And then the bonus is, I hadn't realised, but I thought it was with thin wires, but this is a 10mm wire that's in really good condition that matches the original stuff that was in there. So I'll harvest this from here and use that in the loom too. It's annoying because I've just bought some to replace it, but I have other uses for that because the Land Rover is wired partly with shitty jump leads at the moment. Right, good. That's the 10mm out. Looks perfect. It's actually pretty much, considering that curls round, this curls round and attaches to the post and then comes down here. It's just a tiny bit too long, but I'm not going to cut it because that's like proper Teutonic cable making, and it's made of some weird Chernobyl shit, which I guess was heat resistant or something for the day. I don't know. Anyway, quite chuffed with that. Midway through loom building, been harvesting cables from the old Mercedes loom where I can. I can't match the colours, unfortunately, but we'll get there. Yeah, I've labelled up all the ends with the positions in the pins as they were in the car originally, and I'm replacing each line in turn and matching the old lengths with the new lengths. I got some new 10mm here, which will go between the alternator and the starter. The connectors are here, so these are the Mercedes ones. Got a variety, but there's only two that fit together, but luckily there was a male and a female available, so I can make two bigger ones from this and replace the one in the car, I think, like I said previously. So the next phase is to just complete this, make sure the lengths are all right, and then do the business up here by soldering on bigger sockets on, or bigger prongs actually from the old stuff. So I've got bigger prongs from here, and these fellas here I can, well, those are sockets. It's these ones here. Here are the ones. So these ones here are the bigger male parts that will fit the new connector. So I can solder those in. Hopefully get all the pins right, and we'll have a working brand new loom for the engine. One thing that's been a real pain in the arse is determining what size the wires are, because I've got all the wires here, obviously, and it's really difficult to tell exactly which size is which. I can measure it with the whatever it is, the vernier, whatever you call it. But yeah, it's kind of tricky. I think it's all right. I mean, as long as I'm a bit thicker than what I think the other ones were. But to be honest, when you look at this was once a really thin wire that's like kind of exploded and corroded, so it's much bigger than it previously was, because some of these are like 1mm, which is a fairly small wire. So anyway, yeah. So I need to get a thicker wire into one of these fittings. This one's like, I think it's 1/2 mil. And the one that I need to connect to is quite a bit thicker, so I'm going to get the heat gun out and see if I can undo the solder and get it out. Do it one-handed. That worked very quickly, as you might expect. The wire came out of the plug, so I think I can clean that up now. Ooh. Put the thicker wire in. The job should be a good one. So I tinned the end of the wire, and then heated it up, and then took the heat gun away and pushed the wire through the hole, and then topped the bit on the top up with a normal solder. I think that might be alright, we'll see. Next stage of loom building, I've cleaned the ends with vinegar and then rinsed them in water. They're all connected now to the big male plugs for the new fitting. I did make a mistake on one of them where I got them reversed, but luckily I caught that based on the routing that it was doing. Yeah, so the next step is to mount these into the new socket and close it off as per the original wiring orientation, the original socket. and I'm going to use the heat gun on low setting to help me make sure that these wires stay where they're put, because it's a really snug fit inside here. And see how it goes. All in their places now. Very unstable until we get the back on. So I think what I'm going to do is put the back on now, clamp it down, and then just double check that all the pins match the outputs. Caps on. Big old spaghetti mess coming out the back. I need to get the heat gun on these heat shrinks where I've spliced in these new connectors, but it's all good. It's all really quite satisfying. Again, I need to double check all those pins and things, but they're in there. The 40-year-old connector is clamped back up, and I can work my way from here back down the loom now to neaten things off. And I won't be terminating at the ends until I get it actually in the car, so I know exactly what length is, because if you remember, the other loom was completely screwed and not very indicative of how long things should be. So yeah, next step is to heat shrink and maybe start taping up and testing. So about to start replacing the other side of the connector now. This is the old connector, which is broken off. So I've put a new one on. I need to cut these off, put the bigger ones on from the other loom to go in the bigger connector. I've labelled them all up for the pins, so it's just a case of cutting them, soldering them, and then covering them in heat shrink. I was thinking, in order to make it go into the new connector as neatly as possible, I'm going to cut the same amount off each and then splice on the same amount of each, so that they're roughly in the right positions to go back into the pins inside the connector. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is start putting the loom in. So yeah, because when I start cranking it on the oil pulley or with the battery, I want to see that there's oil pressure in there, so I need to connect that up. Plug the loom in. This is the new new old Mercedes bit. Kind of loops opposite ways, and that's tracking through the loop here, and then I think I'm going to have to go under this pipe and under the water bridge and then down, I think, behind the distributor. Okay, threaded it through, running there and then all the way down the back, and then the tails are down there ready to go back to the starter motor and to the alternator and to the oil bits and pieces. Once I've got all the lengths right, I'll take it back out again and start wrapping it. But yeah, looking good. Well, way better than it was before anyway. Can't wait to get the electric in and see what lights up on the dashboard. The alternator's in. Couldn't remember how it went, but I finally figured it out. Luckily I still had all the bolts. Now I've got to shorten these and terminate them, and then go down and do the starter motor one. Getting there. The alternator connections are made. I've just soldered on, this is kind of cool, this bit here, which I got from the Mercedes loom, which will go onto the oil switch, the oil level switch, quite neatly. Like that there. So the loom is in. I've just connected up the starter motor. The battery's connected. Ground cable is connected. I should have an array of lights, I think, when I turn it on. I've got nothing. Nothing. I wonder. I've got the. I think I've got a horn. I've still got that. That's a bit dodgy. Let's try again. I forgot to do the nuts on the stud on the starter. So maybe now we'll get some light. No, nothing. Get some charge in the battery. Looks like it's pretty empty. It's strange because it was full. So I've got a massive short somewhere. But none of these are warm. I've also now got a starter pack on there. Let's see what happens. Oh my god. Stuff. I've got lights, batteries, red. Oh, it works. No lights though. It looks like the ammeter's working. Not the ammeter, the voltmeter. We low. There. So what do you think? That was quite some effort put in to making that bodge properly bodged. And yeah, I'm so glad actually that it didn't turn over and try and start the first time that I had it, because that is obviously like a fire waiting to happen. It's basically bare wires all together with like a thin bit of insulating tape between them. It's not great. So anyway, now I'm pretty happy that everything is wired up properly and with the correct thickness of the wire, and we've got like new connectors which shouldn't have, not new, they're not new, are they? They're sort of like old Mercedes ones, but they shouldn't have any corrosion or voltage drop in them. And so the next part is to like find out what else is wrong with the electrics, because yeah, there's evidence that not everything is working quite as well as it should do. Anyway, that's for the next episode, I think. We'll see.